Tēnā koutou, music whānau. Friends, I think we're in a good place now. And how did we get here? I think APRA members themselves can be credited with the revival of interest in Blue Smoke. When the top 30 songs of APRA's first 75 years was put to the vote, I was pleasantly surprised when Blue Smoke came in at number 17. Then the Nature's Best CDs took the song into 100,000 New Zealand homes, a half a century after it was released. Blue Smoke's certainly a song that keeps on giving. That Ruru Karitiana wrote it on the way to the war isn't just a good story. There are verified reports of it taking place on the boat. It was sung in the desert by the Maori Battalion. And maybe one day a recording will turn up, because just this year an acetate was discovered of Otago University students singing it in the week the war ended. And it was captured direct to disc by Broadcasting's mobile unit. Ruru returned home from the war early, and he began playing the song in woolsheds, dance halls, music shops, and on marae. It found its own life. But how did those Otago students hear it and want to perform it just 18 months after he got home? And a few months later, the song turns up in Hawera, where a 17-year-old called Jane Nehru sang it again for the mobile unit, and was still 2 years away from the Tanza disc. Because first there was sheet music, published by Beggs, and as it should be, because Ruru had been visiting Beggs stores around the country to sit at their pianos in the foyer and keep tweaking his composition. Blue Smoke is like a true folk song, disseminated widely before recording or airplay. And then in '48, a record company is launched to record New Zealand music. There were some who didn't want it to happen, HMV. But there, Tanza, they have no artists, no songs, and not really any equipment. And the engineer, Stan Dallas, who worked for the once great station 2ZB, had to build the recording and disc cutting machinery for Radio Core to release on its new Tanza label. Everyone seemed to know this wartime song already, written by a local, already 7 years old, and an amateur singer called Pixie Williams is recruited to sing it with great hesitance. Wellington's top dance band is hired to back her, Jimmy Carter's quartet, run by an extremely shy lap steel guitar player. And what strikes me about this moment in our history is that nobody did it as a career move. There was no recording industry. And sure, Radio Core wanted to sell radiograms and needed some 78s. But Stan Dallas made the equipment as a challenge. Ruru Karitiana wanted his baby down on shellac. Jim Carter and his band were very keen, though the best result they could see was having their name on the label of an actual record. That's why there's two bass players on the label. The usual player was sick, but he didn't want to be left out. And Pixie Williams, when the girl from Mohaka was approached because she'd been heard singing at parties, she was very reluctant. I don't want to go to record. No, no, no. Another thing that strikes me is the humility of all these people. The sum total of all the interviews Ruru did is just a few sentences. I only met Pixie once, but didn't interview her, as I'd been told that if I mentioned Blue Smoke, she'd hang up. And Jim Carter turned 100 this year, and hopefully will be watching this on the net. He always says, oh, the song had something. And it was Pixie's performance that made it, as if that keening lap steel guitar of his had never made anyone cry. The saga of Blue Smoke's a great story, but thank God it's a great song. New Zealand's first homegrown recording could have been a dud. And best of all, we're in the pop business. It was a hit, and one 70 years later that we're still happy to hear. So it was with great pleasure that I have the honour of inducting these three pioneers of New Zealand recording, the Blue Smoke whānau, into the New Zealand Music Hall of Fame. And we've now got a video to pay tribute to the trio behind Blue Smoke.
first time, gramophone records for sale to the public are being made entirely in New Zealand. The first is the Ruru Karitiana Quintet playing the conductor's own composition, Blue Smoke.
We are talking about the start of the record industry in New Zealand. It was all making your own way.
Was society ready for Blue Smoke? They were more than ready. That's why it takes the place in our hearts that it does today.
Before Blue Smoke, there was nothing. And after Blue Smoke, well, look where it's led to.
Dad was a 17-year-old boy who had never been off the par before. Music was his mainstay, and quite simply, he was missing his mother.
Blue smoke goes drifting by into the deep blue sky.
On this particular occasion, Dad looked up at the funnels of the Aquitania and noticed that the smoke was going directly behind them. So that's my understanding of where the notion of the blue smoke and the association with home goes.
You've got a local record company wants to start up. They need a song for their first recording, and you've got the song that's already a hit. It's been back in New Zealand now for 5 years, since Ruru returned in 1943.
That was the kick to go into pressing records. Along came Ruru, and the rest history.
You know, they recorded it quite some time after returning, and we would all freely admit that Dad came back damaged. He was alcohol dependent, and the only real light in his life was his music. And I suspect that it was a more poignant song than the song that was performed in Egypt, for example. That's where Jim Carter added an element, I think, the steel guitar, that added what Dad was looking for.
I had a friend, and his father bought him a steel guitar. Just sort of grabbed me, the different music. So I wanted to learn to play.
The thing that's so beautiful about the way Jim plays on Blue Smoke is the connectedness with the song and the connectedness with the vocalist. And if you listen to Pixie's vibrato and her delivery, it's all there in Jim's playing too. He's making the lap steel sing. And I just love that he played with such respect for the vocal and such respect for the song. And that's also a direct reflection of my understanding of his character.
There was a reason that Jim kept getting recruited for all the crucial recordings in the 1950s. He played on Rock Around the Clock when Johnny Cooper recorded that at HMV's behest. He played on Pie Cart Rock and Roll for Johnny Cooper, which was really the first prominent New Zealand rock and roll song written and recorded here. He played on Pie Kakariki just after Blue Smoke. That was Tanza number 2. Ruru looked around town, and Jim was the prominent rhythm guitarist and lap steel guitar player in Wellington. And so the band on Blue Smoke is actually Jim's band. So Jim was first call.
He was looking for a singer at the time, and he was told about this Pixie Williams, but I think he got a bit confused because he started pursuing me, and I didn't realise that he thought I was Pixie until she got a bit cross with this Maori fellow always following us around wherever went outside the hostel, and she growled at him, and that was when he discovered that she was the Pixie Williams he was after.
I was the assistant, so I would take one of the company cars and go and pick Pixie up. She refused, I think, at least once or twice, but they insisted, or Ruru insisted.
I said, tell him to get somebody else, you know. He said, you're going to sing that song for me. I said, okay. I said, I hate nagging.
Windy city, nestling smugly in the hill. I shall love you forever and until.
I can't remember where it was, but when I heard Ain't It a Shame, I think I must have been around about 10. It just blew me away because I loved following Billie Holiday and Doris Day and, you know, all of the older stars because they were Mum's favourites. And so when I heard this beautiful voice and it was Mum, I just, yeah, you pinch yourself. It was a pinch yourself moment.
I think you rejoice for artists of the quality of Pixie Williams. It was a unique South Sea Māori style. The voice was rich and full, diction lovely, and a lot better than most of, in my opinion anyway, than most of the English pop stars of the time.
I wish it could be just you and me, oh, ain't it a shame? I wish you could see deep into my heart and please believe what you see.
I mean, to me, when I think of Pixie Williams, she's our first female, you know, Māori, kahunu, pop star, I guess. She would have been a pop star of her time and of her era. You know, Blue Smoke was such a big hit.
Her pitch and her timing is really amazing. Like, she's totally in tune the entire time, you know? Like, and this is someone who wasn't, like, formally taught.
So interesting to see the process that they would go through and the lengths that they would go through to create a record back in the day, 70 years ago, compared to what we do today. And we've got the luxury today of editing things so easily.
It's always a bit nerve-wracking when they put on the old red light and you've got to start playing. It's everybody's sort of tensed up, but you get through eventually.
Just a chime or two, somewhere in the blue.
From a musician's perspective, it's pretty cool how the musicians back then, they would play their song or the take that they were doing. They'd play it from start to finish, and then the producer in the control room would say, "Hey, how do you think you went? Do you think you got a good take?"
Yeah, I don't think you're ever satisfied with what you're playing. But as long as you can get by and get to the end of the tune without stopping, it's something.
A thing that strikes me about all the three key people involved in Blue Smoke is just how humble they all are. Ruru, Pixie, and Jim Carter, who said, oh, it was Pixie's performance that was the big part of it. But he was proud of another song that he recorded with that band, Jimmy Carter's Hawaiians, Bellbird Serenade.
Hear it softly played, listen to the bellbird serenade.
I knew who Pixie was. I knew the song Blue Smoke, but I didn't really know the other songs in the catalogue. And of course, I've heard of Ruru Karitiana, who's of course legendary. But then, of course, stepping into the next phase with this project and sort of looking at the songs closer and looking at the sort of arrangements and the compositions, that sort of blew my brain out a bit more, because it's like, whoa, there's a real depth going on here, and it's kind of pre sort of any contemporary fashion that we have with music now.
Saddle Hill, I love you till I die. Only God in heaven knows why. Why Saddle Hill?
Well, in those days, hardly anybody made records, and it was sort of a big thing. I think we probably got paid about 30 shillings for it. We wouldn't have cared if we had to pay for it, as long as we got a record with a name on it.
Apart from the historical importance in the context of being the first record recorded and pressed in New Zealand, I think there's a historical context about the song and its place in time as well, which is all part of this. And I think that's why it has a life of its own now, because it's evocative of a time and a place.
Congratulations to Jim, and of course to Ruru and Pixie. It's a fine thing to see you inducted, and thank you for your contribution.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think of your mum or your dad being this incredible person that did something great. So I feel very blessed that my mum did something great, and she's getting awarded for it. It's fantastic. She would have been proud stepping up with Ruru and Jim, you know, just to get together with the boys again. and have a laugh.
Pleased for Dad for the recognition, pleased for Pixie, and in many ways really pleased for Jim because, you know, most of these people have gone and departed without any recognition at all.
Sounds really good. I think Pixie deserves to get something like that. It's really, really something for her.
My memories of home will never die.
Please welcome Ruru's son, Ruru Karitiana, Pixie's daughter, Amelia Costello, and original Tanza studio audio technician, John Shears, to the stage to accept awards on their behalf.
I was ordered by the boys to go first. I had to take my shoes off. Not used to. Thank you. The heels. This is your story, and we're passing it to you. You capture the times of today, and the culture of today, and our stories of today, and package them in a way that can be unfurled for future generations that aren't held in books. Sorry, Chris. And libraries not to be read again. The journey started for me in 2010 when Mike Gibson picked up the phone and said, yes, I'll remaster your mum's shellac records into something great. And it picked up again last year when a girlfriend, Debbie G, reminded me that this year was the 70th year anniversary of the launch of Blue Smoke on the 26th of June, 1949. It was actually recorded in 1948, and John's going to share that little ditty with you. It's great what you do. You should be paid. You should not have to do things for free. You should absolutely be given the rights and the royalties, because you not only capture our story forever, you make the days bearable. You make us stop and smile or cry or remember, just like a fine perfume or wine, a special time in our lives. So I think that this award is for you. Thank you very much.
What a wonderful crowd. Thank you for coming. Thank you for me being invited. This is a really special moment for me. Be assured that when we made that record, we didn't really think we were doing anything terribly special. We had a job to do. We had a lot of failures. You will know that Blue Smoke was released in 1949, but it was actually recorded in 1948. And the reason it wasn't released till 1949 is we had to learn and find how to turn it into a shellac record. And we failed miserably many, many, many times. And this is a real payoff. Thank you. I'd also like to just comment that sitting with you listening to the earlier speeches, I was really struck by the size of this organisation, APRA. When I was involved in the record industry in 48, 49 through to the 50s, APRA was represented in New Zealand by one man. And now there's a whole host of people. And it's a huge organisation. And I think that's just magic. The man that was APRA in those days was also a violinist. So he had a musical background. And I was an amateur musician as well. And we both played in an orchestra called the Savage Club Orchestra. And when that film was, parts of that film you've just seen were made, where did they make it? In the very same theatre that we used to play in during the winter on Saturday nights. So, you know, this is one of the really strange coincidences that can happen in life. Thank you very much.
Tēnā koutou katoa. As I said in the film, but would repeat again, the recording with Pixie's wistful vocal overlaid by Jim's steel guitar created something that was evocative of a particular time in our history. But today I think it's useful to reflect that that was a boy from Rangitari whose first language was te reo, and who wrote that song primarily and originally in Māori. And it was then recorded by a young wahine from Ngāti Kahungunu, and yet it's taken so long for Māori music to become mainstream again. And although these people began the New Zealand music industry pressing the first record and recording the first record, I'd like to acknowledge all of the musicians, songwriters, composers in the room, because it's you who have picked up this mahi and have taken it forward and take New Zealand music to the world today, every day. Kia ora tātou.
And now to pay tribute to these wonderful artists, we have an awesome bunch of musicians from Wellington who have been working on bringing songs like Blue Smoke back to life for a new generation. Please welcome Lisa Tomlins, Kirsten Teretor, Ricky Gooch, James Illingworth, Mark Somerville, Jackie Nyman, Nick Atkinson, Luca Mangi, Matthew Verrill and the Black Quartet to perform Blue Smoke.
Eu